Hey there, welcome to Error Debugging.
My name is Nikhil.
My name is Shanwaz, and today we are going to talk about a very interesting topic which we all face in our day to day life, and that is why do we forget and what we can do about it.
Causes of forgetting. Remembering or forgetting is a matter of strength of learning, strength of retention, and factors operative in retrieving the stored materials to reproduce or recall the stored material from memory system. Generally, it is believed that better we learn, better will be our memory, and conversely, poorer is the learning, poorer is our memory. Thus, it is clear that learning and memory are inseparable units, and therefore, memory depends upon how better or poor we learn and acquire various experiences. There are several factors which influence the strength of learning, such as meaningfulness of learning material, degree of learning, and learning methods. So, we'll talk about meaningfulness of learning materials. It is our everyday experience that memory of meaningful materials is better than meaningless materials. It is so because meaningful materials are easily associated and are better organized. Lyon, in 1914, in his experiment, gave to a group of subjects four different types of materials to learn and memorize. The material included 200 nonsense syllables, 200 single digits, 200 meaningful words taken from a prose, and 200 meaningful words taken from a poem. The procedure was to compare the rates of learning for equal amounts of material with varying degrees of meaningfulnesses. The findings indicated that with decreasing degrees of meaningfulness, more art trials were needed to learn and memorize for meaningfulness material. Nonsense syllables and digits were poorer as compared to words taken from prose and poem. It is much easier to learn sense than nonsense. Similarly, it is much easier to retain sense than nonsense. The reason for poor memory for nonsense material is that it is never learned well. Underwood in 1964 said, so the traces formed for being retained are relatively less vivid and hence not well retained. We'll talk about the degree of learning now. So it is a very common perception that more complete mastery of original material lead to better memory. The amount of retention depended upon the amount of overlearning. Overlearning beyond moderate level is not much effective because beyond moderate degree of overlearning, a point of diminishing return is reached. Thus, for good retention, there is probably an optimum level of degree of overlearning, and this optimum degree depends upon the nature of learning task as well as learner's ability. Learning methods. There are several ways of learning such as massed versus spaced learning, whole versus part learning, active versus passive learning, learning with understanding or simply rote learning, etc. Retention takes place between learning and recall. During this period, that is, retentions and intervals, certain factors operate in process of consolidation of learned materials. Such factors influence encoding processes. As information flows in from I'm sorry. As information flows in from senses, much of it is lost in the sensory memory itself within a fraction of a second. It so happens because immediately following information displaces the earlier one. Hence, there are lost in less than a second before being further processed and encoded in short-term memory. Interferences may be due to either anti-consolidation, perseverance, or response competitions, or the factors may jointly operate and exert negative influence in getting the original experience retained better. Interfering effects have extensively been studied by many psychologists such as Dillenbach in 1924, Woodwards in 1938, McGowan in 1942, Forrest and Crowley in 1948, Irwin in 1948, and others. Waking versus sleeping. Ormer in 1932 has found that during waking state, other activities, even if these are unrelated to original learning, disrupt consolidation of the memory traces. While during sleep, the engrams created by original learning get consolidated more easily and as the same is not easily disrupted by any other activity.
As described by Nikhil, in order to not forget things, one must have a good focus and intention to learn. An individual must have an habit of overlearning, and they should practice this overlearning within the limits. Hope you guys enjoyed our video and hope you learned something new and fascinating. See you again with more cool and good stuff. Till then, like our video, share our video, and subscribe to our channel. Viva la ciencia!